Good morning, students. Hope you're all doing well. Now, from today onwards, we'll be doing revision classes for your upcoming online exams. Whatever doubts you have regarding your exams or how it will be conducted, the pattern, everything, it will be explained to you by the school itself. Okay, you'll get a message or a demo video, so don't get all hassled about it. Okay, don't start panicking that how will I give my exam, I don't know the proper procedure. You will get all the information that is required from the school. Okay, so let us now begin with our revision. Let us now revise the first chapter within your syllabus, the Harappan Civilization. This marks the first phase of urbanization in the Indian subcontinent. So, this time period does not only hold a significance in terms of being the first urban civilization, it also holds a unique place as it is contemporary of both Mesopotamian civilization as well as Egyptian civilization, which was flourishing during that time. So, how do we find more information about this civilization? This civilization that thrived almost 4,500 years ago. Okay, so as we always do, we'll try to look into the sources. So for studying Harappan civilization, we have two broad sources, that is the archaeological source as well as the literary source. For archaeological source, we speak about those artifacts or structures that were recovered while carrying out excavations at these sites. These include the pots, the burial sites, as well as the different kind of artifacts such as which can be further categorized into luxurious goods as well as utilitarian goods. Now, the Harappan seal, which holds the distinction of being the most unique or distinct artifact of Harappan civilization, holds a bit ambiguous place. You can categorize it as a literary source also because it has a line of script given on it, or you can hold it as an archaeological source as this script has not been deciphered yet. We only know the functional purpose of that seal. We don't know what is written. That is why it's falls under an ambiguous category. Take it either as a literary source or as an archaeological source. Now, the beginning of this civilization. See, as we have already spoken while we were taking previous video lecture, that any civilization does not spring up on its own. It needs to have a predecessor or a precursor. Matlab, it has to reach that optimum point. So there were cultures preceding the mature culture. Okay, there are three cultures which we have to study, which were occupying this Indus Valley region. The first one was the early Harappan culture. Okay, the second one is the mature Harappan culture, which is synonymous with Indus Valley civilization, and the third part is the late Harappan culture. So in this early Harappan culture or early Harappan period, you had people who had their own distinct way of life. They had their distinctive set of pottery, art and craft. Even their housing construction technique was not as advanced as that of the mature phase of the civilization. Okay? So these Harappan people or this Harappan phase, early Harappan phase, slowly over a period of centuries culminated into mature Harappan civilization, which was distinct from the early phase. Now, how can you say so? There are certain evidences that say that most of these sites which were occupied by the early Harappans, such as Amri or Kot Diji or Dam Sambat, they were abandoned by the mature phase of Harappan civilization. Okay, these sites were not into use anymore. People shifted to new sites, they occupied newer settlements. But you cannot say there was a complete break. Okay, why do we say that? We say that because the dietary practices of early Harappans as well as mature Harappans remained same. Dietary practices क्या होता है? It is through the dietary practice that a human body is able to sustain itself. That is the sustenance, the subsistence strategy. Okay, so the Harappans, whether it is the early Harappans or the mature Harappans, they followed a similar eating pattern. So they had both plant products as well as animal protein in their diet. How do archaeologists come to know about their dietary practices? So there are specialized archaeologists, you can say, who study about the dietary practices of ancient people. So if you are trying to reconstruct the dietary practices through plant remains, those people will be known as archaeobotanists. And if you're trying to construct the dietary practices through animal remains, such as bones that have been found in those sites, they will be studied by archaeozoologists. So it is by the efforts of these archaeobotanists and archaeozoologists that we can get a somewhat clear picture about what kind of diet the Harappan people, whether it was early or mature, they followed. Okay, so the Harappans ate a wide variety of cereals known as wheat, barley, lentil, chickpea, millets. But do keep in mind that rice, even though evidence of rice is found within the Harappan civilization, the use of rice as a cereal was not widespread. Then you have evidence about animals. So animals might have been used for the purpose of either supplementing them with the plant diet, that is, the Harappans were known to have. Now, how do archaeologists reconstruct the agricultural practices of Harappan people? For this, the archaeologists, they carry out excavations. So not only they excavate artifacts, but also they excavate sites. So through the artifacts, archaeologists are able to infer that certain terracotta sculptures or seals that give a representation of bull, they indicate that Harappans might have used bulls to plow the agricultural fields. Then there are also evidence of wooden plows at different sites. Then when an entire site has been excavated, such as that of Kalibangan, it showcases that the agricultural field was divided in such a way that two different crops might have been grown together. So it is furrowed at right angles. Next are the set of tools that were used by Harappans. These include not only bronze tools but also stone tools. And finally, for irrigation purposes, Harappans were known to have used canals, wells, as well as reservoirs. Now, the evidence of all these above mentioned artifacts are found at particular sites. You need to make sure that you know all these sites in proper order. It is very important for your MCQ. Okay, so make a chart of it, make a list, make a chart, and try to see where each and everything has been excavated. Mohenjo-daro, a planned urban center. Now let us look into one of the largest urban center or city within the Harappan civilization. Now this city, Mohenjo-daro, held the distinction of being the largest city within the Harappan civilization till 2014, until this title was overtaken by an Indian city within the Harappan civilization known as Rakhi Gadi, but we'll not be looking into that because it's not given in your NCRT. So if we stick to the NCRT, we'll have to state that Mohenjo-daro is the largest city within the Harappan civilization. This is the distinction that it holds. Whereas Harappa was the first site to be discovered in the इंडस वैली सिविलाइजेशन. सो दोनों का इंपॉर्टेंस अलग अलग जगह अपना याद रखना. हैरप्पा फर्स्ट सिटी टू बी डिस्कवर्ड, मोहनजोदारो द लार्जेस्ट सिटी टू बी डिस्कवर्ड. So the entire Mohenjo-daro city or settlement was divided into two. The lower town, which was much larger in its territorial extent, was located on the eastern side, whereas the citadel, which was located on the eastern side, it contained the most important structures present within that city. The most famous example of it is the Great Path. So this citadel, which housed important structure, was built on a raised mud brick platform. Okay, and it was separated from the lower town by a wall. Think of it like a mini fortification. Now these lower town consisted of buildings, especially the residential buildings. That is, this is where the people of the city lived. The lower town also consisted of certain clusters of workshops where articles of daily use might have been produced. So since these lower towns had houses built on these houses, or any structure within the lower town was also built on its own individual foundation. ठीक है, तो लोअर सेटलमेंट को बनाने के लिए पहले से कोई रेज्ड प्लेटफॉर्म पे नहीं बनाया. जो जो घर बनता था उसका अपना फाउंडेशन पहले बना देते थे. सो one thing that you have to keep in mind is that carrying such huge amount of mud from one place to another to build this foundation, to lay this foundation, was a mammoth task. बहुत ही बड़ा टास्क था, very laborious task, which might have involved not only a lot of labor but also someone with a vision, a person who was a person or a committee, whoever you can say, who was planning these things and then implementing them. So certain evidence that suggests that Mohenjo-daro was a planned urban center is the fact that amount of labor that had to be mobilized in order to do so, planning was required. Then another sign which included that planning was there was the standardized ratio of the brick, which was 4:2:1 according to the length, breadth and height ka ratio. Then we look into the planning that was involved while laying the structures for this lower town. Okay, so that will also indicate the grid like pattern that we'll do, that also indicated planning. So this is it for today. Kindly go and revise it. Okay, study everything line by line, don't skip any line. All these are very important and can be asked as a question. So that's it for today. Go and study and all the best. Mohenjo-daro